Wrestling with the Past, hosted by Jason Nupp. Join Jason as he reviews classic wrestling footage from the golden era of the WWF, when our biggest childhood fear was anyone from the dreaded Heenan family capturing the precious World Wrestling Federation gold from our red and yellow savior, Hulk Hogan. There were Rowdy Pipers, Snookas who superflied, animals with green tongues, Russian Volkovs, Sheiks of Iron, a demolition that could axe and smash things to bits. It was a glorious time to be alive. It was a time to rock and wrestle, when a video coliseum fulfilled our childhood world with excitement and wonder. And now, the host of Wrestling with the Past, give it up, give it up, give it up for Mr. Jason Nupp.
What's up, guys? Jason Nupp, New Age Revolution, down here in the cave for another fun-filled episode of Wrestling with the Past. Honestly, this is like one of my favorite things that I do on the channel here with you guys because, just watching the footage myself, before I was sharing it with you guys, I would watch it at night. I have a pretty, repetitious nighttime routine. I'm going to eat some of XOX candies here. Hold on. I have a pretty repetitious nighttime routine. It's usually pretty solo, which is okay by me. And so usually, I'm on the couch and I'm watching, a DVD. I'm watching wrestling on DVD, and I'm attentive. I probably shouldn't have put this in right now, but they're just good. I'm attentive to the wrestling, but I'm not thinking about it as in-depthly as I am when I'm going to share it with you guys. So that's gross, isn't it? Fishing a Swedish fish out of your teeth. But it happens, right? Anyway, let's jump right into it because this ends up being like a half-hour show. Okay, so we are mid-November. We are mid-November 1984. WrestleMania is probably a concept at this point. I'm sure it's something that's being talked about, but we've heard nothing of it. It's never even been mentioned yet at this point. So we're going to start things off with Maple Leaf Wrestling. Again, not my favorite show at all. It's nostalgic. It's fun to have. It's just not my favorite show. Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas returns to the WWF after, kind of an absence. Maybe, I don't know, shortly after he and Rocky Johnson lost the titles to Adonis and Murdoch, he took off. He is back against Rene Goulet and obviously gets the win. Jack Reynolds, one of the commentators for Maple Leaf Wrestling, he continuously says right here on the World Wrestling Federation. And I don't know what that means. We'll be back right here on the World Wrestling Federation. We've got an update on Greg Valentine, and these updates, I remember them from when I was a kid. I'm not going to eat these the whole time, sorry. I remember these updates when I was a kid. They're just clips of matches put to synth music, right? And I always thought they were so cool. I don't think they're that cool as an adult. But as a kid, I loved watching these little collections. We've got a fellow named Bob Wayne. Bob Wayne is taking on Paul Orndorff here on Maple Leaf Wrestling. Paul Orndorff obviously gets the Duke. The U.S. Express are in action. Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo take on Muhammad Saad and No Class Bobby Bass. And I think Bobby Bass was more of a territory guy. And I think Muhammad Saad was, although he doesn't have much of a look. But I think Bobby Bass had a little bit more fame than just jobber status on MLW, Maple Leaf Wrestling. Of course, the U.S. Express get the Duke. And one thing to notice about Mike Rotundo is one of the sweatiest men in wrestling. And he is sweat. Like Barry Windham doesn't break a sweat. Bobby Bass doesn't break a sweat. But 30, 40 seconds into the match, Mike Rotundo is glistening like he's got like Vaseline all over his body. Mike Rotundo is a sweater. Following the U.S. Express is Blackjack Mulligan. Blackjack Mulligan is back on Maple Leaf Wrestling, and, not surprisingly, or maybe coincidentally, I guess, I don't know, maybe a little inside thing, his match follows the match of his son, Barry Windham. He takes on Ted Grizzly. Ted Grizzly is a really cool-looking job guy. Really cool. And I'm sure that, again, he had, Bobby Bass-type success in the territories. But it's cool to see, like, this big, burly Blackjack Mulligan taking on big, burly Ted Grizzly. It's a fun little, it's not a great match. It's a fun matchup. In watching Mulligan, I'm surprised, again, I think I said this before, I'm surprised he wasn't a little bit more in wrestling. And I think he probably was a lot. I just didn't watch a lot of Mid-Atlantic. I'm not familiar with a lot of Florida Mid-Atlantic stuff. When Blackjack Mulligan, I think, was U.S. champion. I'm not familiar with a lot of that. I didn't watch a lot of that. So, could he have been bigger in the WWF? Probably not at the time. He didn't fit. He wasn't going to be the Intercontinental Champion. So I guess he couldn't have been bigger in the WWF. I know he was a bigger heel when he was having these, bloodbaths with Bob Backlund. But I like Blackjack Mulligan. We've got a Piper's Pit with S.D. Jones. Now, this was just a total setup. Like, S.D. Jones is just a transitional guest because immediately S.D. Jones says something like, hey, why don't you give somebody else a try, man? Why don't you give somebody else a try? And I'm like, what is he talking about? Give someone else a try. And Blackjack Mulligan walks in to the pit, and S.D. Jones takes off. And, Piper is like, right up in Blackjack Mulligan's face. You think your size is going to intimidate me? No way. And basically, Blackjack Mulligan shuts him down and says that, Piper's Pit, the concept here on Maple Leaf Wrestling has to change. He's going to start an interview show, and he's going to give people the opportunity to talk. People are going to come on his show and talk. And this, I believe, is the beginning of Blackjack's Barbecue, which I'm pretty sure takes over the Piper's Pit slot. Because at the end of this pit, Piper just tosses him the microphone and walks off. So I think we're done with Piper's Pit in Canada. I think Blackjack's Barbecue is going to be taken over. Finally, we've got Goldie Rogers, another great-looking job guy. I've showed him off here before. Goldie Rogers takes on Tito Santana. Tito Santana's still bandaged up, obviously from the surgery, the knee surgery, and the storyline, knee injury with Greg Valentine. Tito back, climbing back for his next Intercontinental title shot. It's not coming yet because Valentine is the champion at WrestleMania, but Tito will get the IC belt back soon, and it's in that famous, I think it was Boston. I think it's in that famous Boston Garden cage match. It might be Cap Center. I'm not sure, but for my knowledge, that Greg Valentine Tito Santana cage match incomplete. We don't have footage of that. We do have classic footage of the end of that match where Greg Valentine destroys the belt by slamming it against the cage, which wouldn't destroy it. And then Tito cries, kind of deal. Bob Backlund cried when his belt was broken. I think Hogan cried when Mr. Perfect smashed his belt. And Tito has like a freak out when but that's later. That hasn't happened yet. And then they close the show with a replay of Tonga Kid versus Roddy Piper from a few weeks prior on Championship Wrestling, the one where Jimmy Snuka returns. So that's Maple Leaf Wrestling for the week. Uneventful except for the possibly pending debut of Blackjack's Barbecue, replacing good old Piper's Pit. And I guess that makes sense to me, to have Piper go to Canada to tape, four weeks of shows. I don't know. Maybe it made sense just to have Blackjack in Canada and Piper not go. I don't know. I don't know why they would do that. But we got a returning Tony Atlas. We've got Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham, one of my favorite tag teams, teaming up. And Blackjack Barbecue is coming. All right. Then we go to same day, November 17th, 1984. We have an episode of Championship Wrestling, the flagship show of the WWF. We've got commentary that we're used to with Vince McMahon and Bruno Sammartino. This one starts off with Barry Windham taking on Charlie Fulton. Again, I'll never grow tired of Barry Windham matches. I just love young Barry Windham. Older Barry Windham is okay. So Barry went to obviously when he came back to the WWF in 91 or so as the Widowmaker. I haven't seen that era in so long. I can't remember if I'm going to care about the Widowmaker because I literally haven't seen that since 91 or so. But young 84, 85 Barry Windham, I just love. Nikolai Volkov is in action. He takes on a fella named Athens Apollo. Athens Apollo. I have never, ever seen this fella before. I have never heard of him before, and I don't think we're going to see him after. I don't remember him being around unless they change his name. But the job guy's name taking on Nikolai Volkov is Athens Apollo. Nikolai with the wind. We've got an interview with Jimmy Snuka and Tonga Kid. It's the Mean Gene interview. You know how it goes. The back, not the event center, but the interview in between matches, the gold and the blue and the WWF and Mean Gene. It's like the house show preview match. So they're previewing I believe a Boston Gardens house shows. A lot of these championship wrestling shows are Boston, in the Boston market, right? So they're interviewing Snuka and Tonga, and it's for a Texas Tornado match, whatever. Tonga and Snuka versus Piper and Orndorff. Well, first up on the mic is Jimmy Snuka. And let me see if I wrote it. No, I didn't write anything that as I was watching it, I was like, I have to verbatim this. Like, I have to copy everything that he's saying and then imitate the interview for you. But it was late and I didn't. So Jimmy Snuka rambles on about, what this means and you people out there in TV land and Piper, Piper, you've, just horrible, right? Then they throw it to Tonga Kid. Now, prior to that, while Jimmy Snuka is talking, Mean Gene is like this the whole time, because he does a lot of the point. Mean Gene is desperately, and he's looking off camera at somebody. You can always tell when Mean Gene's about to lose it. He'll make eye contact with somebody off camera, and he'll just crack up, and he'll put his hand over his mouth, or and then the camera will fade in, or pan in, or whatever, to get off of Gene's face. But Gene is holding it together, and then they throw it to Tonga Kid. And he is supposed to, his opening line is supposed to be something like coming up in Madison Square Garden, or when we get to Madison Square Garden, or when I get you in Madison Square Garden, whatever he was supposed to say. But he immediately messes up his line and calls it Madison Garden, with like a stutter in between where the square was supposed to be. So it's like a Madison Garden or Madison Gush Garden or something like that. And instead of just going on, he puts his hand over his head and goes, ah, and walks off. That's it. He messes up the opening line. He calls it Madison Garden, puts a hand over his head, screams a little, and walks off. And the whole time, Jimmy Snuka is going, like he's agreeing with whatever Tonga Kid is supposed to say. He walks off. He's gone. And then Mean Gene says, he's obviously upset, and Jimmy Snuka closes it with some nonsense. And then before the camera cuts off, Mean Gene says, "Good Lord." Good Lord. He says, "Good Lord." And I don't know if that was supposed to be on the camera, but it fits in. You know, it's gone. Like, Mean Gene is just like, I've had enough. What in the heck? Really? Guys, come on. These are the two worst interviews on the planet. And Tonga Kid botches it and walks off. I'd tell you to go find it, but I don't know where you're going to find it. It's just so good and so bad. Okay, I spent a lot of time on that. Salvatore Bellomo and AJ Petruzzi is a name that we're going to hear a lot of on WWF TV. Salvatore Bellomo and AJ Petruzzi take on Adonis and Murdoch. Now, this is important because we've been seeing Hillbilly Jim in the audience for months and months. Like, this went long. Like, Hillbilly Jim was in the audience for like 6 months. Now he's getting involved because Adonis starts jawing with Hillbilly Jim at ringside, and Hillbilly is threatening to climb over the rail. And actually the fans are kind of calming him down because fans are morons. And they might have actually believed that Hillbilly Jim is just a guy who likes to dress in overalls and come to all these shows. So they're actually trying to hold it back. And Vince McMahon is going, "Oh, that would be the biggest mistake of your life, big fella. Biggest mistake of your life." So nothing happens. And that's it. But it's happening, right? It's finally happening. Hillbilly Jim is coming. He's about to jump the rail. Jimmy Snuka in action against a fella named Carl Fury. Again, a more popular job name. I'm not sure what else Carl Fury did, but we see a lot of Carl Fury. Jimmy Snuka just with your classic Jimmy Snuka win. We've got Piper's Pit with the Briscoes, so the Briscoes are still hanging around. And Piper is making fun of them, of course. Apparently the Briscoes are Native American, which I don't know why I didn't know that, but I didn't. So Piper is making fun of their Indian heritage, as he's calling it, by bringing out bones for their noses. So Roddy Piper is trying to make fun of the Indians, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, by bringing out bones to put in their noses. And I think Piper botched his insult there. I don't get that one. Maybe that's over my head. I didn't know that the Indians wore bones in their noses. Maybe they did. I haven't seen any. I don't know if that's the case. But that was Piper's go-to insult. Great. We got Ken Patera. Ken Patera is hanging around. Well, not just hanging around. He'll be around a while. He's obviously part of the big haircut incident, which should be coming soon. It's got to be in the next couple of months. But he takes on Jose Luis Rivera and defeats him soundly, of course. We've got more Billy Jack Haynes. He's on the horse still, and he's just out in the middle of a field, and he's riding this horse. And then he hops off the horse and makes sure to tell us that he doesn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. And there's actually a blooper of this one online. If you go look it up on YouTube, the horse actually nudges Billy Jack in the in the nether region, in the bits and pieces, in the twig and berries, as they say. And everybody cracks up. And that's it. That's the blooper. But it's funny to see, because Billy Jack is kind of looking like something just happened. Like he might have a little smirk on his face as the camera cuts out of the interview. Like they were just having a good old time. Check that out. You might be able to find it. But again, this might be the last Billy Jack promo, because he never comes in, as I've mentioned before. He doesn't come in at all until like 86 or 87. We've got Tony Garea against Dr. D. David Schultz. Dr. D gets his butt handed to him by Garea. Garea's a house of fire. Again, this is like the second week on Championship Wrestling that Tony Garea is a house of fire. He almost defeated Big John Studd last week, and now he's giving Dr. D a run for his money. Funny comment from Vince McMahon. He says, Bruno, why do they call him Doctor? And then Bruno Sammartino says, I haven't the faintest idea. That's pretty funny, I think. So Tony Garea really laying into Dr. D before losing to Dr. D. That's it for Championship Wrestling November 17th. That is followed up by the final show of our review here, TNT. TNT is back, Tuesday Night Titans, November 20th, 1984. Captain Lou is the first guest out, and he is horrible. But in this, he's funny. I don't like Captain Lou. I don't like him. But this one had me cracking up, because he comes out, he's obnoxious, he's rambling, and he's just blah blah. But he plays the fat thing. So he sits there with his shirt up, and he's always got indigestion, and he's always belching on the shows, and he's like, burp. But when he does it, he goes like this. Ready? This is what he does, and it cracks me up. He's sitting there and he's rubbing his belly. He goes, oh, burp, burp, burp. Like he's not burping. He just makes a noise with his mouth. Burp. He goes like that. It's hilarious. But even better is Vince McMahon's disgusted face. Vince McMahon has this putrid, disgusted look on his face when Albano is sitting there, and it's hilarious. Oh boy. We got the spoiler for some reason. If you're the guest on TNT, they have to show a match that you've been a part of. So they go back and show Captain Lou managing the spoiler from Maple Leaf Wrestling against Nick DiCarlo. This is a little dated. This match is maybe 4 months old or so. I don't think we're seeing much of the spoiler anymore, but they got to show a match, so they picked that one for some reason. Now, this is the best part of this. Albano stays on the set, right? So he's still sitting there. He just moves down a chair like they did on like The Tonight Show or something. And Barry Windham and let's see, we got Barry Windham first. Barry Windham is the guest now on TNT. And he's talking. He's trying to do the interview that McMahon is desperately trying to ask these questions straight-faced. And Barry Windham is trying to answer them straight, while Lou Albano is just making comments the whole time, and they're hilarious because he's not talking loud. He's just kind of talking in the background. And so, McMahon is like, tell me about yourself, Barry Windham. And Barry was like, well, yeah, I went to, Texas high school. And then you hear Albano be like, crappy high school. Crappy high school. Just like little comments like that. Fantastic. And then, Barry Windham will stop and look at him and be like, and then McMahon's like, Albano, please. It's just so good. It's so good. Because Captain Lou is quiet and subtle, and he's just making, silly comments about everything that Barry Windham says. It's great. So then we've got Barry Windham versus Charlie Fulton as the match that they show. Mike Rotundo is out next. He joins Barry Windham. Albano's still there and still doing the thing. Of course, whatever Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo say, Albano's running his mouth in the background. It's hilarious. We get the U.S. Express versus Muhammad Saad and No Class Bobby Bass. And surprisingly, back in the interview segment, back on TNT, Windham and Rotundo say how this is not their first time tag teaming, and they have won multiple regional titles, which is cool. The Florida tag team title, I think, with Albano in the background going, big deal, things like great. So funny. And I hate Albano, but this is so funny. All right, we've got Rocky Johnson now. They okay, everybody's gone. Albano's gone. U.S. Express is gone. They come back from commercial. They go right to a match. Rocky Johnson taking on Nikolai Volkov from Maple Leaf Garden. I love the Maple Leaf Garden house show matches. They've got that classic ramp. And there was actually a story on the ramp that somebody wrote for like Slam Sports or something. They give you the history of the ramp and where it came from, and it's great. Let's see. Volkov actually wins that match with the hangman or whatever it's called, where you pick the guy up and you drop him neck first on the top rope. Gets the win over Rocky Johnson. This was ridiculously silly. We've got the world's oldest fan. TNT was a silly show. It would do ridiculous, silly gimmicks and segments, and this one was stupid. Lord Alfred Hayes announces the world's oldest fan, and his name is Lloyd Lynch, and he's just like some guy dressed up in that really, really bad, like, old man makeup, and he's coming out, and he's shaking, and he's got the old man voice. Oh, I loved watching a fella named George back in the day before he was Gorge. Just stupid. McMahon's trying to make the best of it. It's like a dead segment. I don't understand why they did it. It's stupid. Then we go. Then we got David Sammartino as the guest. And the matchup is David versus Mr. Fuji, which I think was his debut match. So again, we're talking very old 6-month dated matches that they're airing on TNT. David versus Fuji. We come back from the match. Captain Lou is back, and he's giving training advice to David, and he's telling him about high protein, low carbohydrate diet, and Albano is always talking, when he's talking about, he's got the same lines. He uses the same lines. He talks about the brain of a BB. He says the brain the size of a BB, if you put it in a pigeon, the pigeon flies backwards. That's always been Captain Lou's line. And he's also talking about unborn virgin's goat milk. So when he's talking to David Sammartino, he's telling him he needs a lot of protein and he needs to drink unborn virgin goat milk. What is that? What is unborn virgin's goat milk? Like, how do you get milk out of something unborn? Unborn virgin's goat milk is hilarious. He just puts those 3 words together. It's incredible. I love it. Anyway, then, so David leaves. This show is dragging on. The TNT, I love TNT. It's one of my favorite WWF shows. This one is taking forever. Blackjack Mulligan is the guest next. He does a little talking, of course, and he takes on Ted Grizzly, and we know how that goes. Then we're back with the Blackjack Mulligan square dancing segment. We have a band, like a hoedown band, and they're playing their music, and then they all start to square dance with Lord Alfred Hayes and Vince McMahon and Blackjack Mulligan, and then Barry Windham comes out and Mike Rotundo comes out, and they're all square dancing. Okay. Then they go to commercial, and I think it's over, but it's not over, because they come back, and there's a mechanical bull on the set. And so Vince McMahon hops up on the bull, and it's going slow at first, and then it speeds up a little bit, and he doesn't fall off, but he kind of like leans off. They stop it, he gets off. He's laughing. And that's it. That's how TNT went. I think they went to commercial and came back, and they were all dancing again. They were all doing square dancing. Again, I love the show TNT. I do. It's great. But these segments are like, they did a Tonga Kid luau. They did like Chief Jay Strongo did a war dance in the parking lot. Iron Sheik brought out Iron Sheik had like women taking care of him, like in a set, in a tent of some kind. Mr. Fuji had geisha girls tending to him, and now we've got Blackjack Mulligan doing the hoedown. TNT. Okay, that does it for Wrestling with the Past. Entering a fun time, the end of 1984, and we'll see how soon into 1985 do we get some first mentions of WrestleMania. That's all. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll do it again soon. Good night now.